Girlfriend's ex did a better job fulfilling her Harry Potter fantasy, and now our relationship is on the rocks. My GF is a hardcore Harry Potter fan. Or at least she used to be. I remember during the honeymoon phase of our relationship, she mentioned one of her fantasies was a Harry Potter roleplay situation where she was a professor at Hogwarts that ends up being seduced by one of her students. I didn't know what to do with that information at the time, but I thought it was funny and I never forgot about it. Less than 2 years later, I decided to bring out my inner wizard and figure out how to fulfill the fantasy my GF always wanted. After completing my Harry Potter research, aka rewatching the movies, I called my GF a few days ago and encouraged her to play along and avoid asking questions when she came over that evening. That was it. No spoilers. When my GF showed up at my flat, I was standing in the lounge wearing a Harry Potter costume and pointing a wand at her. She laughed. I referred to my GF as professor and asked her if she remembered that spell she taught me during dark arts class that paralyzed people. My GF was still laughing, but she eventually nodded in response to my question. I waved my wand and shouted Petrificus Totalis. My GF struggled to stop laughing, but she managed to get into character and freeze instantly, as per my spell. I literally picked up my motionless GF and put her down on the couch. I proceeded to undress my GF while telling her how much I've always wanted to sleep with a mudblood and pump her full of pure blood seed. Not gonna lie, I cringed on the inside when I delivered that line because it sounded silly, but then again, I could tell my GF was turned on when I removed her underwear. It was working. When I was done going down on my GF, I waved my wand between her legs and said unimpregnate. I made her aware that I was going to penetrate her without protection and my made-up spell would prevent her from becoming a mudblood. MILF. I unzipped my pants and banged my GF in my wizard uniform. She forgot she was under my paralysis spell and broke character a few times when she moaned and moved her body, but at that point we were both past the point of controlling ourselves and just did whatever felt good. The two of us came really hard. Based on the outcome, I knew my GF enjoyed what I did. However, post-nut clarity left her with mixed feelings afterwards. My GF said the fantasy was hot when it happened and she appreciated my effort, but replaying it in her head made her feel like we were acting too much like children to get ourselves off and that was kind of giving her the ick. She never said it in so many words, but I sensed that she was low-key trying to tell me that she outgrew her Harry Potter fantasy and I was probably too late. Instead of letting it go and moving on, I revisited the topic last night, almost a week since the fantasy. I decided to ask my GF what I could do differently in case I wanted to surprise her with a sequel. My GF sighed and said I could just copy and paste what her ex-BF did. She paused mid-sentence and looked at me like she suddenly realized she said something bad. Against my better judgment, I encouraged my GF to finish her sentence. She said she didn't really care about Harry Potter prior to meeting her ex, who was the OG Potter fan apparently. She said his nerdy obsession with Harry Potter was endearing. I asked how endearing. My GF dodged my question and said I should focus on the fact that she enjoyed the version of her fantasy I created. I asked what was her ex's version. My GF said if you really want to know. Before telling me that her ex enjoyed playing the role of a Quidditch captain who ends up missing the game and losing the tournament because he was balls deep inside his wizard GF. She said it was unexpectedly hot because her ex pretended to be reluctant and submissive whereas she had to be distracting and dominant, which was new for her. She said she didn't know she could squirt until she dominated her ex. I said I didn't know she could squirt until now. My GF awkwardly laughed it off and said I should be grateful I've never made her squirt because she always hated the cleanup. I asked my GF why she would plant the seed of a Harry Potter roleplay fantasy at the beginning of our relationship if her ex already did a better job. She rolled her eyes at me saying better job and said she was still somewhat high on her ex during our first few dates and wanted to recapture the same magic from her previous relationship, but she eventually fell in love with me and forgot about her ex and his Harry Potter BS, until recently when she saw me in my Harry Potter costume, which automatically made her think of her ex. I should have stopped asking questions, but for some reason I couldn't. I asked my GF if she was turned on during the fantasy roleplay because she saw me in the Harry Potter costume or her ex. She said nothing. I asked if the ick she was feeling afterwards was not really the ick, but the guilt of knowing she was thinking of someone else fulfilling her fantasy instead of me. My GF said she was gonna go and she did. I didn't stop her. Now she's not responding to my messages or my calls. I dressed up as Harry Potter to fulfill a sexual fantasy my GF had at the beginning of our relationship, but I accidentally made her remember how much better that fantasy was when her ex was Harry Potter and not me. Now my relationship is no longer in a good place. Update 1. My GF stopped ghosting me and agreed to discuss what happened between us regarding the roleplay. We were both understanding and apologetic and forgiving. My GF said she never expected me to remember the Harry Potter fantasy, let alone act it out years later without talking about it first and making sure that the two of us were on the same page. She said she was unprepared for the feelings the fantasy triggered. On one hand, she said I made her feel somewhat nostalgic because I reminded her of an experience from her past she really enjoyed. On the other hand, she said she wanted to forget about that experience because A, she was invested in her relationship with me and B, she eventually got over her ex and part of her moving on process was filing everything related to Harry Potter under ex-BF baggage. My GF apologized for referencing her ex when I was trying to brainstorm different ways to spice things up in the bedroom through roleplay. She said she was low-key upset at herself for thinking about her ex mid-sex and took her frustration out on me when she realized I was keen to roleplay again, despite her telling me that she got the ick from the whole Harry Potter roleplay experience. I apologized for surprising her with an expired roleplay fantasy that made her feel uncomfortable afterwards and for bombarding her with questions about her ex-BF. I promised to stop asking questions about her ex if she promised never to ghost me again. My GF thanked me for stepping out of my comfort zone with my Harry Potter roleplay and said she was willing to test out other roleplay fantasies outside of the Harry Potter universe if I was still interested. I said I might have a roleplay fantasy we could test out at that moment. My GF put her hand between my legs and said she was listening. I said I was Jack and she was Rose in Titanic, but instead of Jack freezing to death, a lifeboat rescued both of them just in time. However, Jack might still die of hypothermia, or worse, survive and then end up with a damaged dick due to frostbite, so now it's up to Rose to jerk him off in front of the other survivors to prevent the love of her life from getting gangrene in his genitals. My GF had her hand in my pants when I was done pitching the fantasy. She was entertained until I snapped my fingers and said, "Oh wait, my ex and I already did that one." It was a joke that instantly killed the mood, but I thought it was funny. My GF thought it was too soon and stopped touching me. I think my GF thought it was at least kind of funny because she didn't look mad. That being said, she showed 0% interest in sleeping with me after that. All of the above happened a couple of days ago, but work made it difficult for me to find proper time to post an update sooner. I think my GF and I are gonna be okay. Thank you for riding this relationship roller coaster with me. Hopefully none of you will ever read anything new from me going forward. TL, peace has been restored in my relationship. However, I now have 2 roleplay fantasies that my GF does not approve of, Harry Potter and Titanic. Update 2. My GF and I were talking about weird sexual experiences the other night and I made the mistake of mentioning that not only did I literally dress up as Harry Potter before having sex with my ex, but I also pretended to actually be Harry Potter during sex. I explained to my GF that my attempt at role-playing backfired on me when my ex-GF revealed that her ex-BF also played the role of horny Harry Potter when the two of them were intimate, and based on the fact that he apparently made her squirt, which I never did, it became clear to me that the ex-BF did a better job with his magic wand than I ever did with mine. My GF unexpectedly hugged me at the end of the story and said, "There, my love, don't be sad." I was not sad. Mid-hug, my GF suggested that I redo my Harry Potter roleplay with her so that I could have a positive sexual experience to associate with Harry Potter. I said no need, I've moved on. My GF refused to accept that and said she wanted to see me as horny Harry. I said that was never gonna happen because the last GF who saw me as horny Harry unfortunately became my ex-GF shortly afterwards. My GF put her hand between my legs and convinced me to reconsider role-playing as Harry Potter. Cut to later that week. My GF and I agreed to do the roleplay thing at her apartment because he lived alone and I did not. So, there I was, standing in the hallway in my HP costume, practicing made-up spells while waiting for my GF to open the front door. The anticipation of sex was beginning to trigger an erection. By the time the door finally opened, the shape of my boner was somewhat visible. I didn't think that would be a problem until I locked eyes with the person who opened the door. It was not my GF. It was her mother. I covered my crotch with my wizard robe as soon as I realized who was looking at me. The mom struggled to stop laughing when she caught me covering up. My GF appeared moments later and begged her mom to please stop laughing and go away. Her mom, who now had her hand over her mouth to hide how hilarious this was for her, apologized for laughing and said I must be the new BF. I said yes. My GF sarcastically thanked her mom for showing up unannounced just before I arrived, which prompted her mom to congratulate her for finding her own BF for once instead of ending up with her sister's exes. Her mom looked at me and said no offense but her other daughter was too old to still be into Harry Potter and therefore it was safe to assume that I was not one of her exes. My GF apologized to me on her mom's behalf and said her mom was being a bitch because her boob job got botched. Her mom pointed at me while warning my GF that I was an unplanned pregnancy waiting to happen based on what she saw when she opened the door. I said that was not what it looked like. The mom said it looked like Harry Potter and the failure to pay child support. My GF didn't allow her mom stay any longer when she said that. Needless to say, my GF was no longer in the mood to fuck Harry Potter. We decided that horny Harry is a curse for couples and should be excluded from any roleplay fantasy we might practice in the future. TL, my new GF convinced me to roleplay as Harry Potter during sex after she found out that I did the same thing for my ex-GF. We never made it to the roleplay or the sex because my GF had an unexpected guest, aka her mom, when I showed up in character and in costume. Her mom ended up answering the door and accidentally saw Harry Potter with a heart-on, which added to the tension that was already present between mother and daughter.